Jake.
I'm Tom.
And we are VIMTV, Velocities in Music. Today, folks, we're going to review the newest release from a band called the Twilight Sad. No One Can Ever Know, spelled N-O. We just thought that was intriguing. You know, this band, if you're not familiar with them, they're from Scotland. And the land of the Scots. And their lead singer is going to let you know this instantly when you turn this on, because, man, he does not try to hide his very thick Scottish accent at all. And at first, it was very off-putting to me. Not to mention, this entire band's sound is so off-putting. Now, I want to go with the disclaimer that these guys, this is a different direction for the Twilight Sad, and it's definitely... this direction is extremely moody. This is a mood bomb of an album. You know, one thing that I noticed is, like, I just get a ton of, it's just reeking of post-punk sounds, especially in the drums and the percussion, and just the repetition on every track.
I'd compare it a lot to, like, Joy Division, or some Depeche Mode in there with the synths.
Yep, because, you know, it's just meeting Radiohead and what they're doing with the moods. It's just soaked in that sound. And then, as Tom said, this is all about synth. That is just one of the main things that you hear about this album. Now, I think that that's a very polarizing feature of this album. I think it's going to really piss off, this direction is going to really piss off some Twilight Sad fans. And just general listeners, I think, are going to be polarized by this. Now, let's just come out and say it, Tom. I like this album a lot more than you, for VIMTV standards. And part of the reason was, I think that these guys are doing something very, very, very original. And that uniqueness is something I treasure in a band. So my two big things that I look for in really good music that I just fall in love with are mood and originality, and this nails both of them. So that's why I love it. And we'll get into some of the disparity between our scores here a little bit later. In my description, what I can tell you about the reasons why I was able to get into these songs, as I mentioned, they're so they repeat so much that it's almost tough at times to understand where the track is evolving. And I just kind of got lost in these rhythms that were being created from Graham's vocals and the guitars and the synths. I just feel like these different rhythms were just being mixed together at all times, and it just made this like cadence that just was hypnotic with these just arching synths and then the mood of the song that I just couldn't get out of. These songs, you know, average track length here is anywhere, but probably around like 4.5 to 5 minutes long is average. So longer tracks, there's only 9 tracks on this album, and in general, they all just flew by. I found it very fluid of a listen, and that's something that I really appreciated. Tom, what was your take on No One Can Ever Know?
I liked it. Overall, not as much as you. The big thing that killed it for me is the production. I'll come out and say it. That is the #1 glaring issue with this album for me.
I completely agree.
And also, you know, although I'll come out and say, you know, we cited some Joy Division influence there. I've never been a big Joy Division fan. I know, shame on me. I talk about music and review it, and I don't like Joy Division. You can crucify me later if you want. But also, you know, think about, you know, knowing the differences between you and I. You know, this is an album where a lot of the emotional connection comes from the vocals, and the instrumentals don't quite match up to it. Well, does it sound like we've talked about albums like that before?
Radiohead, man. No, and he does. The vocalist is, I mean, all of the emotion is there. I mean, he does such a good job projecting. It just resonates within you, you know, what he's feeling, and it mixes so well with those synths. And
it's an effect that really, it plays out like a movie, and it makes the band name, the Twilight Sad, very apt for this sound.
Twilight is really sad.
Because it... a lot of different meanings you can take from that. But anyways, because the deal is you have this very lively and emotional vocal performance, and then you have these instrumentals and these just bleak synths and drums that just sound like like as cold as the surface of the moon. It sounds like a freaking corpse backing up this like wailing soul.
And so, I love the album cover they chose.
Yeah, it fits really well. I know I can't get it out of my head when I'm listening to it. So well done there. But the things that really bothered me is I felt like the beats could have been, they were good, they were well written, they worked well with the song, but they were too low in the mix, they were kind of weak, they weren't very fat. Now, I'm not looking for Dr. Dre beats here or anything, but I just felt like they didn't play a very large role. And then where there was synth, it was way too big. It was overshadowing guitar, drums, bass, which the bass, it is that kind of clunky post-punk bass sound. So I would have just liked things to be a little more well-rounded. Now, I know that it's just part of the style, so it's just, you know, part of it's just me not digging the style and wishing that it would have been something else, which isn't entirely fair, and I'll admit that.
No, but that's part of listening to music.
Exactly, exactly. It's just that I think, you know, if these things had been tweaked, I would have liked it better. And the biggest thing, I think, was the synth. I think the synth was well written, where it's there and where it's loud, like it's a part that needs to be there, but in the mix, it overshadows things. I would have liked it more as a subtle kind of underneath, extra layered texture kind of thing.
Yeah, and that's where I think that if that were to happen, the album would have sounded much more minimal. The interplay between the synth, like what I got out of this album was the interplay between the synth and the vocals and guitar for that matter. And that interplay was what made the songs really addictive to me.
Yeah.
So that's probably where we're varying. Now, and I gotta admit too, I completely agree with you on the production. I wrote down that that's the #1 issue. It sounds like this was plucked straight out of 1987. You know, you were spot on with your Joy Division meets Depeche Mode comparison. You know, and while this does have moments where I'm just grimacing from how gross the sounds meet up, when the sounds meet up incorrectly, it just sounds awful. But those times are at least doubled by how many times I'm just like, holy shit, this is absolutely brilliant. The audacity that these guys are putting these sounds together and take this like post-punk style is just it's really interesting. And it's some of the most interesting things I've seen done with electronic elements in 2011, 2012 music. I haven't seen stuff this interesting, so I really appreciate that. It reminds me on a quality level, you know, El Cielo by Dredge is an album where there's a similar thing where I have moments on that album where it's like, oh, this is gross. This sounds disgusting. This is so dumb. Why do I love this album? Because when you have just these, you know, accidental greatness or great albums, you know, there might be some sloppy parts, but you know, there's so many accidental and yet beautiful parts. That has an effect that just, you know, it wins you over, you know?
Yeah.
And it makes it one of your favorite albums. Now, I'm not saying this is one of my favorite albums. I'm sticking with 83 on this one. I think there's a number of issues here that could have been improved to make this a stronger album, mostly in the production and cleaning up some of those parts where it just didn't line up the way I wanted it to. But I did find this to be very, you know, just kind of takes me over. I love it. I got really into it. So, big fan of this album. I know you're not as big of a fan. What was your score?
I'm going even 70.
So, a big gap between our scores. You guys don't get to see that very often. Doesn't happen very often anymore.
Nope.
Tom and I know each other and we know our music very well. And that's just where we're at with it. So, while there is a little bit of separation, we're interested to see where you guys are at, so let us know at www.velocitiesandmusic.com or youtube.com/velocitiesandmusic. Also, follow us on Twitter and like us on Facebook and tell us what you want us to review. Your opinion matters greatly. I'm Jake.
I'm Tom.
And we are VIMTV, Velocities and Music, moving music critique forward.